minutes. And if there are no corrections or additions, can someone motion to accept the minutes as circulated? Do we have a motion to accept the minutes?
So moved.
Sorry, was that Mr. Khan?
Yes.
Perfect. Do we have a second?
This is Matt. I can second.
Very good. Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. So I think that was everyone unanimous on the call. So with that, the motion carries. I'll move on to the opening statement. So by Title 4, Subtitle 2, Part 1, Sections 32-4-203 and 32-4-204, which establish the Design Review Panel. The DRP was established to encourage design excellence and shall act in a consulting and advisory capacity to the agents involved in the process for reviewing development plans. The objectives for DRP's assessment include spatial, visual, and functional relationships to topography, the natural built features of the site, as well as surrounding features, visual and functional integration of streetscape, pedestrian pathways, playgrounds, recreational amenities and parks, streets and sidewalks, that they're laid out in a safe and a convenient manner, and parking is a positive design element. Building, parking garages, and other structures are spatially and visually integrated and suitable to their surroundings in proportion, massing, and type of materials and colors, as well as signage and other elements of urban design. Plant materials are selected and cited to define the site, provide a theme, frame of view, enhance architecture and street character, improve microclimate, provide transition between dissimilar uses, screen views, and reduce noise levels and glare. In carrying out its duties, the DRP utilizes the guidelines, plans, and architectural principles in the Comprehensive Manual of Development Policies and/or the master plans, as well as other guidelines and regulations adopted into law. Certain areas of the county were designated by the County Council to require review by the DRP. The panel will provide a technical review of the proposed project. Issues relative to zoning, setback relief, environmental and stormwater management, and traffic regulations do not fall under our purview and are not regulated through and are otherwise regulated through appropriate agencies responsible for those aspects of the development plan review process. Again, we will not be covering those elements in the DRP. The panel consists of 9 members. All are professionals with practical knowledge in the matters of design. For the purpose of making recommendations on a particular project, 3 members shall constitute a quorum. The attendance and comments of each member will be recorded in the minutes and shall be an open record and available to the public, along with documents submitted to the panel for inspection and copying. There will be opportunity for the community to offer comments and suggestions at the conclusion of the applicant's presentation. These comments will also be included in the written record of the meeting. When a speaker is called up to speak, please keep your comments focused on design perspectives within your allotted 2 minutes time. If you're speaking on behalf of a community group, you will have 5 minutes. At the conclusion of the meeting, the Department of Planning will sum up our recommendations from the panel before a motion for a vote is suggested. Recent legislation has changed the panel's recommendations to be advisory on the hearing officer and various county agencies, unless the hearing officer or agencies find that the panel's actions constitute an abuse of its discretion or are unsupported by the documentation and evidence presented. Disposition of the plan will be determined as either approved with conditions, or additional review with a second meeting required. With that, that concludes the opening statement, and the items for initial or continued discussion are 35 Walker Pikesville Commercial Review and the 4100 Maple Avenue Forge Overlook projects. And we'll move to the first item. Item 1, again, is the 35 Walker Avenue Commercial Review. Presenter, if you are available for this project, the floor is yours.
Good.
My name is Stuart Macklin. I'm the project architect and project manager for the job. We have an existing two-story special education building located at 31 Walker Avenue. And we are adding a new three-story educational addition to the building. The footprint is approximately 3,600 square feet. It's a three-story again, with the first floor being an auditorium primarily, second floor being multi-purpose rooms and therapy rooms, third floor being special use rooms as well as more therapy rooms. The building is directly adjacent to and part of the existing building, and there will be connections between the existing and the new. There are very, very few site amenities associated with this. There's some new landscaping in the front of the building with a sidewalk to the street itself. There is an existing playground in the back of the new addition, it's being used by the present building. And we have a parking lot onto the existing building as well. There is no new parking in this proposal. The materials we selected are going to be as close as possible to the existing materials, which are brick, full range, a modular brick with a standard mortar joint. The glazing is tinted just like the existing building, and there's aluminum trim and aluminum mansard to match the existing building. We have presented elevation drawings and a perspective drawing. And as always, we've been shown some existing pictures. Even though the other drawings don't exactly match the brick, they will be. It's just a matter of presentation and printing. It is our intention to match it as close as possible. There's a little bit of lighting going on in the back of the existing building. There's a little bit of lighting in the front of the existing building that would be located in the new canopy. What else is there? Let's see. I don't know what else. That's pretty conclusive. Anybody have some questions? It'd be a pleasure to answer.
Yeah, we didn't have all the visuals up. Was there anything else that you wanted to reference?
Oh, you don't have your visuals up? I'm sorry? You don't have what was presented to you? There's the existing building?
Yeah, I just wanted to know if Marta wanted to click through these fully.
Yeah, please. So that's the existing building on this visual is, yeah, you can see it better. You have to look carefully to find out what's existing and what's not. On this document right here, everything to the right of the darker glass and on the right on this one are both, that's the existing section. The new section is the taller section to the left. The side elevation. Please excuse me while we get other phone calls. I'm not sure what else to say. It's pretty straightforward, pretty understandable. Just a second. There we go. There we go.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to give you the opportunity to go through any of those. Very good.
If you look at there's a designation on the building on the drawings that show existing and new. If you can make that out, depending on what scale you're looking at it at. The perspective shows that there's a hi, Rabbi.
Hello.
The perspective shows it very easily here. The dark glass is a new front on the existing part of the building. Everything to the left of that dark glass is new. Even though those colors are not representative of the exact colors of the building, they will be as close as possible that we can get to the brick and to the aluminum and to the glass.
Good. Thank you for that presentation. Marta, is there anyone signed up? Oh, sorry, first, are there any speakers from the public who wish to speak?
Exactly, Cecily. Brett, is anyone requested?
There's nobody in the chat that has requested to speak.
Same here. I don't see anyone who would like to speak. So no, we don't have anyone, Cecily.
Okay, thank you. If you would then, Marta, go on to the staff report.
Okay, I will try to share the staff report. Please let me know if you can see it. Can you see it on the screen right now, or
Yes.
you see the staff report? Perfect. Thank you so much. So we prepared our staff report based on the Comprehensive Manual of Development Policies, Pikesville Commercial Revitalization Guidelines, Pikesville Revitalization Action Plan, and Baldwin County Landscape Manual. In terms of site design, staff recommends approval of the site design subject to the following condition. Clarify and coordinate with the Office of Zoning if any zoning actions are required for this development, and if so, address the actions. Form an image. Staff recommends approval for the form an image. Open space and landscape design. Staff recommends approval subject to the following conditions. Number 1, clarify if any existing trees will be removed. Provide a detailed landscape plan with a list of all proposed plants. Consider native and adaptive plants. Number 2, based on the Pikesville Commercial Revitalization Guidelines, page 2, when parking lots are located adjacent to a road, a minimum 10 feet wide landscaping buffer between the sidewalk and parking lot pavement is to be provided. The buffer must contain shrubbery of at least 42 inches high and or a garden wall or fence of the same height. These elements are to be provided to screen the parking lot and is located along Walker Avenue. Along Walker Avenue. Number 3, provide bike racks and label them on the site plan. Number 4, provide location and enclosure details for the proposed dumpster on the site plan. Number 5, refurbish the existing transformer facing Walker Avenue. Streets, parking, and circulation. Staff recommends approval subject to the following conditions. Provide, number 1, provide the number of parking spaces required for this new development. Number 2, clearly indicate on the site plan all buildings entrances and provide a diagram for pedestrian circulation around the building and from the parking lot to the building entrances. Number 3, the sidewalk along the entire property length must meet ADA requirements. Show and label on the site plan how the ADA requirements are met. And signage and lighting, staff recommends approval subject to the following conditions. Number 1, provide signage details for the proposed addition, including material, size, dimensions, color, and illumination. Number 2, indicate and label on the site plan any proposed lighting, in particular building and parking lighting. And architectural design, staff recommends approval of the architectural design. And this concludes our staff report. Thank you, Cecily.
Thank you, Marta, for going through that. I'd like to move on to the panel comments at this time. We're just going to call in order. Sorry, one moment here. Let's see, Mr. Khan, do you want to start us off with the discussion?
Sure. Can we go back to the site plan?
And now,
Yes.
perfect, thank you.
I think that I certainly agree with essentially everything that's in the staff report. The only thing that seems of potential concern is the parking spaces required and being clear that we meet the code requirements for that, or if not, that there's a fair explanation for that. But I think that the remainder of the comments seem accurate. The other thing I would be specific about is exactly how the masonry will match, and whether there's a way to define that more carefully for the purpose of the record. But otherwise, I don't have any comments.
Thank you, Mr. Khan. Mr. Reynolds?
Just, I too agree with the staff report. I think just two items. One is and it's in the staff report, is the large tree shown on the site plan right in front of the building addition. Seems like that tree may be difficult to preserve. So if it is to be preserved, I think the means and method for tree protection should be shown and documented in this drawing set. And then the second comment is the sidewalk along Walker Avenue. It says it's a variable width sidewalk. The existing building looks, there's a lawn strip area between the sidewalk and the curb, but this is showing a sidewalk up against the curb, so that transition seems a little abrupt. So just a little more thought should be probably put on the plan on how that sidewalk actually ties in to the adjacent existing building.
Thank you, Matt. We'll move on to, let's see, Mr. Ross not here. Mr. Sharma?
I concur with the staff report, and I don't have any further comment.
Thank you. Ms. Foss?
Yes, I agree with the staff report and Matt on the tree. I was looking at the one of the photos included in the presentation. It looks like a new landscape and streetscape was provided, and it's hard to tell if that second tree is still there or not. And it's also hard to tell what those shrubs are to match. I don't think it's really screening the parking or the drive aisle access in front of the building. And it also looks like that sidewalk has a lifting area, which is an ADA concern. So hopefully that'll be included in some of the repairs. But other than that, it looks good. So those are my comments.
Julie, Mr. Stevens?
Hello, everyone. I don't know what I really missed, but the presentation looks fine to me. The only comment I have is, well, there's two comments. One is the new brick. Hopefully, it will be a match. Typically, with the age of the building, sometimes that's not really what's going to happen. But I just want to make that a point. I'm sure, others have made that point. The only other thing is probably looking at the front elevation and looking at the right where the existing stair is, and there's the vertical glazing. Maybe there's probably a need or maybe a proposed glazing on that new stair tower that's adjacent to the new entry. Maybe some thought can be put there to begin to mimic the existing stair tower as the to kind of tie this entire facade together. Outside of that, everything else looks fine to me. I guess the only other concern is at the roof. Is there anything else that the owner is looking to do on that roof other than it to be a roof? I didn't see an actual roof plan, so I'm just taking that to be a roof and not any type of roof terrace or anything for pedestrian use. That's all.
If the applicant can just speak to that question, I don't think there was, but I don't think I did see a roof plan either. Is there anything other than mechanical on the roof?
No, we will have mechanical on the roof and we'll have proper screening as well.
Right, okay.
Okay.
Were you interested in any other questions? Did you say yes?
Mr. Stevens, anything else?
No, that's it. I mean, the roof, the brick and the potential of additional glazing on that new stair tower.
Okay, understood. Mr. Isafaro.
Hi, good evening. Could Marta please go back to the site plan? That one's great. Yeah, thank you. So I have three comments, all advisory in nature. I don't need any kind of response, and this will not be in the motion. But number one, between the existing rectangular building and the new proposed building, there's a pretty significant storm drain that runs down there. It appears that you're going to be building over top of that, and just know that you're going to need to work that out with some of the county agencies to either relocate or abandon, but that could be fairly costly. So I just wanted to bring that up. Number two, it appears that you're also building over a lot line. So there may be some zoning relief or zoning actions needed there. So I did see a comment in the county staff report to that. And then number three, on the landscape plan, it appears that you're proposing planting units instead of specific landscape species. So I would ask you on the staff level to refine the plan to show exactly what you are proposing. Again, all advisory, and that concludes my comments.
Okay, thank you, Joe. All right, my only comments, I mean, I do agree with the other panelists and that the staff comments cover quite a bit of it. My particular considerations were the sidewalk and then the roof, but I think my comment on the roof is more aesthetic. I think I heard you mention that the roof would be the color, the green color that is shown in the rendering, not the bronze color that it currently is or is shown in the elevation. Is that
We'll
correct?
match the bronze completely.
Sorry, say that again.
It's a standing seam bronze aluminum to match as close as we possibly can to the existing.
So it would not be the green that's shown in the
No,
rendering?
don't be fooled by the presentations and our printers and things.
Okay,
Everything is
thank
to
you.
match existing as close as possible.
Thank you for clarifying that. I do like the bronze better, so that really that alleviates that.
It's a
one
typical
concern.
1975 mansard aluminum and ribbon building.
Yeah, not my favorite roof form, but I understand it is an existing.
Not mine either, but we're going to match it up, and people will
That's
drive
right.
down the street and hopefully say, well, that looks like one building. That's what we want.
Right. Makes sense. Okay. Well, very good. I don't have any other comments. So with that, I'll ask one of my other panelists to make a motion. If there's no further discussion, is there anyone who would like to take the lead on a motion?
I have one more question. If I might, the lots would have to be consolidated, do what is being proposed. And so the rest of the question is, why isn't the landscape requirement along Walker Avenue actually needing to be extended all the way across the property, since it ultimately is going to be one property?
Is there anyone from the project who wants to speak to that? Are you consolidating? Are you required to consolidate the lot?
You're suggesting that the area to the right and left of the main driveway be landscaped as well? Is that what I'm hearing?
All the way across the front,
Yes.
because it essentially is one property when you do the
That's
project.
correct. We can take a look at that very easily. Right now, I believe, Rabbi, they use that one area as a security spot for the security officer.
It's been landscaped, actually the past few months they landscaped it. But you're referring to the parking spot in the front?
Yes.
Yeah, security office usually is over there, but that could be changed. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, we can extend the landscape very easily.
Sure.
This is Jennifer, and I did want to point out to the panelists that we did comment on this in our staff report. So if you're saying you concur with what's in our staff report, they will have to address those comments related to landscaping from our staff report.
Okay, thank you, Jen, for that clarification. Okay, I think those are all good points then. So would someone like to forward a motion?
I make a motion. So I would only assume that we are going to approve this with the conditions of adhering to the staff report, unless there is some other objections.
I didn't have any others, and I think the rest of the panelists, I think Joe's were mainly advisory. I think the one that I heard was the existing tree, just a question about it. So unless I don't have any objections to that motion, does any of the other panelists want to add in any additions to the staff report comments?
This is Joe Yusufero. I have no additions to add and would second the motion.
Sorry, Joe, did you say you have no other conditions?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. So with that, the motion's on the table. We'll move to a vote. All in favor, say aye to approve the application based on the conditions of the staff report. That's the motion on the table. Unless planning staff has any objections, we'll move to a vote.
Aye.
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 An aye. So I think that's all of us. So that is unanimous and the motion so carries. Thank you, presenters, for going through your project, and good luck with the renovations.
Thank you.
Hi, Cecily, I'm sorry. I think I missed it. Is this to be reviewed administratively?
Oh, sorry, we didn't specify that, but yes, that with the conditions in hand, administratively reviewed. Do we need to recount? I don't think anyone would object, so I think that stands. Okay, hearing no objections to that, thank you, and we'll move on to item number 2, which is the 4100 Maple Avenue Forge Overlook, which is coming back to us. I'd like to read one statement before we move on to the presenter's presentation. I'll also note that Joe Yusufero is part of the development team, so he's going to recuse himself from joining the panel in discussions. So the statement I'd like to read is per bill number 61-21, adopted by the County Council on June 7th, 2021. A definition to clearly define purpose-built student housing and its requirements was established. Per said bill regulations, it mandates that each building or development be reviewed by the design review panel for context within the community in which it is proposed. With that statement, I'll ask the presenters for the project to proceed with your presentation.
Awesome. Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Excuse me, I just wanted to clarify. Can you see the presentation on the screen?
Yes.
I can, Marta,
Oh.
yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'll make a quick reintroduction just to get us started. I know it's been almost 3 months since we were back here before our last panel. We've had some eggnog, some New Year celebrations. So just remind everybody who we are. I'm Brandon Rao with Bowler. Joining me tonight on behalf of the development team is Mark Levy and Jamie Frazier with Rock Realty. They're the developer. Jeff Henneman and Ruth Landsman with Henneman Architects, the architect for the project. And then Jason Vittori with Smith Schmidt, Land Use Council, as well as Eric McWilliams and Matt Poolhouse here with Bowler. So we're back here before you tonight to present the updates that we've made to the proposed purpose-built student housing community since that October DRP meeting. And we're asking for a favorable recommendation from the panel for the proposed community. This is the first step in a long process, a long development process through the county, and we're excited to continue through. I'm going to make a brief presentation that will highlight the revisions that we've made since that first DRP meeting back in October. The revisions are a result of the feedback that we received from the panel and the recommendations provided by planning's first staff report back in October. And are reflected in the updated pattern book that was submitted in December and that I believe Marta is sharing on the screen. Marta, could you quickly just flip to page 42 of that pattern book? And while she's pulling that up, from a high level standpoint, the revised pattern book provides additional clarity on sections and topography and elevation changes throughout the community. It provides additional clarity on the site furnishings, fencing, lighting, bike racks, bus stops, as well as some additional clarity on the entrance signage, all of which was requested back in October. Thank you, Marta. So page 42 here is an overall rendering of the updated layout. From a layout and really an amenity area standpoint, I want to touch just high level what the changes have been made since October through now to the community. Most of the changes are reflected in what I'll call the southern portion, which is the area that's outlined in red on this page. So quickly touching on those, the size and orientation of the 4 apartment buildings have been adjusted and slightly, and the parking areas have been modified accordingly. Surface parking areas, I should say. The building and surface parking modifications have allowed for additional amenity space to be created, which I know was a point of discussion and a request made in October by the panel and staff. Specifically, the amenity area between buildings A and B, which is, I'll call it on the left side of that southern portion, has been expanded. And additionally, 2 amenity areas have been proposed in the vicinities of buildings C and D. So on the other side of Avalon Ridge Road, on I guess what we call the right side or east side of that southern community. Further, the 5 townhomes were previously proposed at the community entrance with US 1 have been removed from the proposal. These were on the northwest corner of the US 1 and Avalon Ridge Road, Boulevard intersection. That area will be a stormwater facility in the future. And then finally, the 2 what I call sticks of townhomes that are just to the north of that along on the other side of Avalon Ridge Road are now proposed as rear-loaded units, meaning they have a 2-car garage and driveway on the back side away from Avalon Ridge Road. So the development team is in receipt of the planning department's staff report for the January 11th meeting, so today's meeting. And with that, we have prepared a few supplemental exhibits and updates that address and provide additional clarity based on those recommendations identified in that latest staff report. So Marta, if you could share those supplemental PDF that was sent over. Should have like 9 or so slides, if I recall correctly. I think it's the updated pages. I see it over there on the right tab. Yeah, that rightmost tab, I think, is what it is.
Just give me a second, please. I'm
Sure.
trying
Yeah,
to
take your time.
move some windows. Is this the one that you would like to talk
No, I think
about?
it's 2 more tabs to the right of that. Yep, next one over.
This one?
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Cool. So we'll flip through these and just go through what these are. And again, these are updates to the December pattern book. So there weren't any holistic changes to layout or anything along those lines. We've just provided additional clarity in response to some of the questions and recommendations identified in that January 11th, today's staff report for planning. So here on page 4, we've updated the project description to properly reflect the number of bus stops, as well as clarify the management plan that will be required to make sure that this is a purpose-built student housing community. Can you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. On this slide, we have highlighted the 3 amenity spaces to further clarify where those amenity spaces are. And additionally, this slide also shows the bus shelter, and it's one of 3 bus shelters proposed at the 3 bus stops throughout this purpose-built student community, purpose-built student housing community. Next slide, please. This slide has been updated just to show the 2 bus shelters at the 2 bus stop locations there on the northern side of that purpose-built student housing community. Next slide. I think you can skip the next 2 and go to, I think it's page 25 would be what it is. Yep. One more. Awesome. Thank you. So this is an updated schematic of the entrance monument sign that's down at the intersection of Route 1 and Avalon Ridge Boulevard, heading into the community. From the pattern book to here, we just added some additional material information and as well as dimensional information to help identify scale and height and size of the sign. Next page, please. These next 3 slides are similar to what you've seen in the December pattern book that was submitted for this meeting, but further provide additional labels and clarity on the site furnishings, site features in each one of these amenity areas. So this one specifically is the area that's been enlarged in between buildings A and B. Next slide, please. This is the new amenity area in between buildings C and D. And then next slide, please. And this is the second new amenity area that's to the east of building D. Next page, please. This slide just provides further clarification on the location of the bike racks that are proposed, as well as the number of bike spaces, if you will call that, at each of those locations. The 2 that are on the northernmost point are at the 2 bus stops. And then on the southern portion, at the 5 locations, one of those is at the bus stop, and the other 4 are in front of the apartment buildings. Next slide, please. This slide just identifies the location of the site and area lights that are proposed with this community. And next. Thank you. And this is, I'll call it an updated cross section, but this page 43 was included in the development, or excuse me, the pattern book with the December submission. All we have done is added elevation marks to help convey the topographic change across these respective sections. And I believe that is it on this slide. Marta, if you're able to go 1 tab back on your screen on your PDF Adobe. Meaning yeah, perfect. Thank you. These are 2 additional sections that we have cut in based on the recommendations in the staff report. These are two sections that are through the different townhome areas, I'll call it. Section AA is the portion, or is the section that's cut through, I'll call it Avalon Ridge Road in the southern section. So what you're looking at is on the left side, Avalon Ridge Boulevard, the townhomes with the rear loaded garages, and as you proceed to the right of the section, the driveways, and then surface parking, and then ultimately the environmental features on the right side. And then on the section BB is the section cut through the northern portion, I'll call it the stub road, but Miners Way extension that shows the townhome and their proximity and the topographic relationship between the two sides of that road. I think that should be it for the slides. I guess with that, I think we've covered the updates from the October meeting, as well as provided some additional clarity that I believe address the planning department's January 11th staff report. So at this point, I'll turn the virtual mic back over to the panel, but our team is here to answer any questions that you may have, and appreciate your time this evening. Thank you.
Brandon, do you want to make any presentation as to what the conditions were resulting from the prior meeting? I mean, you're only addressing what we have in the current staff report. Or, I mean,
the conditions from the prior meeting, I think that's what we were touching on with and happy to talk through it. So the conditions were related to the recommendations in the October staff report. With that, there's requests on clarification on how the use will be regulated. We included that in the project description, and Jason Vittori is here to answer any questions related to that. Providing accurate elevations in sections. So this slide here, and as well as the one we shared previously on page, I think it was 43, also provide that clarity, hopefully to show the topographic relationship of the proposed community. The amenity space, so one, identifying and labeling it. We provided some supplements to better show and better identify where those 3 locations are, as well as provide additional amenity spaces on the eastern side of Avalon Ridge Boulevard. So there's 2 spaces near C and D, as well as enlarging the space between A and B. The types of fencing proposed, that is included in the updated pattern book. There are 2 different types of fencing proposed, one at the top of retaining walls, one where there aren't retaining walls, where a safety condition isn't as paramount as a retaining wall. Touched on open space. We have added crosswalks as was requested by staff. Bike racks have been identified. I think we went through that, as well as a cut sheet for the proposed bike rack. Related to bicycle pathways or protected lanes, if designated on the plans, which was one of the comments from the last response, the last staff report. There are no bicycle pathways proposed internal to the community. I will say, based on the initial submission to SHA for what we call phase 1 of this, the 182 townhomes, there will be a bike path along US 1 that will be added along that frontage. Further recommendations from that October, or conditions from the October meeting, light locations have been identified in the pattern book. There was a request for wayfinding signage, however, in our experience in these types of communities, wayfinding signage isn't typically needed. If you live in the community, you know how to get to the amenity space next to you, you know where your parking lot is. But we have provided that entrance monument sign to welcome people to the community. And then finally, from an architectural design standpoint, the main comment was related to providing those additional detail on the sections and the topographic change and how that relates across those buildings. And I've presented those. But does that touch on it, Jennifer?
yeah, it would have been a little preferable. We haven't even presented our staff report yet, so you presenting kind of these exhibits are a little premature. The community hasn't had a chance to see our staff report, so I don't think they're going to really know to what you're speaking about. But that's fine.
Thank you.
So, yeah, so Jennifer, I do imagine, I know we'll get to the staff report, I'm okay as chair if we reverse order, if we have you read through the staff report prior to the community speaking. I know there are likely folks signed up and we've had some materials from the community that have been submitted to us. So if procedurally that can happen, I think as the chair, I'd be fine with having you
Yeah,
read
there's
through
no
the
there's
staff
no
report.
provision in the code of what order it should go in. So if you deem it appropriate that we present the staff report and then
Yeah, I think that that's appropriate and would help the community as well. So please proceed.
okay, Marta.
Okay, can you see my screen with the staff report?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. So we prepared our staff report based on bill number 6121, adopted by the County Council on June 7, 2021, and also based on Comprehensive Manual of Development Policies, Baltimore County Landscape Manual, Baltimore County Master Plan 2020, and as I mentioned already, bill number 6121. In terms of site design, staff recommends approval of the site design intent and offers the following comments. Number one, per the resubmission, clearly indicate how the purpose-built student housing will be regulated. Will faculty reside in any of the proposed units? In regards to form and image, staff cannot recommend approval of the form and image and offers the following condition. Number one, provide accurate elevations, cross sections, and perspectives for each proposed townhome group and for the buildings A, B, C, and D to properly portray excuse me, how the changes in grade throughout the proposed development will be presented. Number two, per the resubmission, again, clearly indicate how the purpose-built student housing will be regulated, will faculty reside in any of the proposed units. In regards to open space and landscape design, staff cannot recommend approval of the open space elements subject to the following conditions. Number one, demonstrate, label, and provide additional amenity open space areas within the proposed development specifically for buildings C and D and the townhome area to the north. Clearly label all proposed amenities on the site plan, such as benches, bike racks, street furniture, trash receptacles, bus shelters, and all other proposed amenities. Number two, top and bottom wall elevation numbers for all proposed retaining walls are hard to read. Please provide legible numbers for all proposed retaining walls on the site plan. In regard to streets, parking, and circulation, staff recommends approval subject to the following conditions. Number one, clarify if bicycle storage facilities will be provided and how many bike racks will be provided in storage location as shown on page 32. Show and label all of them on the site plan. Number two, according to the project description, only one bus stop shelter is being proposed. However, on the page 22 of the pattern book, it shows 3 bus stop locations. Please provide bus stop shelters for all 3 and show and label all of them on the site plan. Number 3, the project should meet all applicable design guidelines outlined in the complete street design manual. Number 4, provide sidewalks along Washington Boulevard and Ridge Avenue. Number 5, provide required parking calculations for this development. In regards to signage and lighting, Staff recommends approval subject to the following conditions. Number 1, clarify on which page of the pattern book lighting locations are provided. Number 2, provide the materials and the height dimension for the proposed entrance monument sign. In regards to architectural design, staff cannot recommend approval of the architectural design based on the following. Number 1, provide accurate elevations, cross sections, and perspectives for each proposed townhome group and for the buildings A, B, C, and D to demonstrate the changes in grade of the topography to be able to make a proper evaluation of the proposed architectural design. Number 2, per the resubmission, clearly indicate how the purpose-built student housing will be regulated. Will faculty reside in any of the proposed units? And final recommendation, at this time, staff cannot recommend approval of the Forge Overlook project until all of the above mentioned conditions and comments are addressed. And this concludes the staff report.
Thank you, Marta. So now we'll move on to the opportunity for the public to speak. Are there speakers that are signed up?
Yes, we have Mr. Michael McAuliffe, who is representative of Healththorpe Improvement Association. Let me let him in. I just need a quick second.
Absolutely.
I will do the timing of the speakers. So Mr. McAuliffe will get 5 minutes since he represents an association.
Mr. McAuliffe, can you hear us?
Yes, I can through my phone. I'm looking at you through my computer, but listening through my phone. Some technical difficulties, but I can hear you.
And we can hear you. I believe everyone can hear you. Jan, can you hear Mr. McAuliffe?
Yes.
Okay, so the floor is yours and Jan will do the timing. Thank you so much. You have 5 minutes as a representative of the Healththorpe Improvement Association.
Thank you. Okay, do I understand that this project has not been approved as per this DRP meeting? Okay.
That is correct. This is a re-review. It's a second review.
Thank you. Okay, I'd like to start by giving a compliment to the building architectural design. They are very attractive, but the overall plan needs much more work, in our opinion. And the Healththorpe Improvement Association still has many of the same concerns as we did with the original submission. There is a little confusion about what we are allowed to comment on or not. So I'll start out with asking number 1, can we make comments on open space?
Yes, that's part of the purview of the DRP. So it's appropriate to talk about the quantity, quality, connectivity, and other such things.
Okay. I would like to clarify, though, however, Cecily, for the panel's edification, the Baltimore County open space requirements as per the county requirements are not within the purview of this panel. They can certainly weigh in as to whether there is appropriate open space allocated for the proposed development. But the technical open space requirements will be reviewed at the development plan stage when this Forge Overlook development plan has to go back through the county review process for the amendment to the originally approved development plan, which is not in the purview of the DRP.
Are we guaranteed that this will go through the development plan process?
It has to, yes.
Okay, is there any such thing as an exemption or limited exemption?
No, there is not.
Okay, great. Okay. Well,
Mr. McAuliffe, this is Marta. I'm sorry. Can you please tell me if you would like me to share any of your exhibits that you share with us?
Sure. Yes. If you could, I'm going to go to open. No. Yes. How about the one that's called Phase 2 Beds and Parking Spaces, BR and ML. Okay, so I have some notes on here. It highlights the deficiencies in the parking spaces versus the beds. There's 527 beds proposed for this total project, only 489 parking spaces proposed. So there's a large deficiency there. On the lower end, it's not as bad, but on the upper end, where these townhomes are being presented, there is no on-street parking. There are only two parking spots allotted for each of these units. One's in the driveway and one is in the garage. Okay, and since we're talking about those units up there, I'd like to actually, you opened the meeting up with the definition of a purpose-built student housing. So I'd like to actually read it, some of my time here to read that. And the definition of a dormitory is a building used for the housing of students, both undergraduate and graduate, or resident counselors or advisors. And it is located on campus. So purpose-built student housing is just about identical, only it's off of campus. Purpose-built student housing is a building that is designed for the primary purpose of housing students, both undergraduate and graduate, resident counselors and advisors. So these dormitories and purpose-built student housing is supposed to have students only. There's no mention of faculty. I think faculty is a notion that was introduced during the developer's initial presentation, and I think it's a suggestion that these houses in the ML section can be townhomes for faculty, where that is not true. This is for students only, and all of these buildings should be set up for students. This property in the ML is not allowed to have townhouses on it, and they are townhouses. They are not built in the spirit of this law. So I do want to get that straight, that we have to stop talking about the faculty living here. Okay. So,
Mr. McCullough, you
yes,
have 20 seconds. Technically, I'll give you another extra minute, but you do need to focus on your main points of your argument and wrap it up.
that was one of the main points right there. It is very deficient in open space. This plan suffers from an extreme deficiency of open space and recreational space. If the goal is to attract students, then the outdoor spaces should mimic those of a university campus. This does not. Students desire open spaces to kick a soccer ball, throw a frisbee, hit a baseball, or form a game of flag football. Many college campuses are designed with such spaces, and they are usually centrally located and busy with students. This project has no such spaces, and it needs them. The outdoor spaces should be designed to attractive to students as the student-oriented indoor spaces. With large outdoor space available for the students, the living units will otherwise be nothing more than chicken coops with students. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Are there other speakers signed up?
Yes, the next person requested to speak is Tiffany Wiseman. Marta, are you able to get her in?
Yes, Miss Stephanie Wiseman, can you hear us? You are unmuted now and you can speak.
Me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I have a lot of the same concerns as I did as well the first time around. Honestly, what I'm looking at is not really much change. It just looks like they flipped the building around. Instead of sideways, it's straight now. And I don't know if you guys caught it, but they added the fifth story to two of the buildings. When it was initially 4 stories, it's now 5. I still have the same concerns about the open space. It's definitely not enough open space, and the layout of the open space is not what it should be for housing for students. And the same thing as well with the townhomes. I don't understand why the townhomes are even being incorporated in this project, considering they're 4-bedroom with garage townhouses. I don't see a student living in a 4-bedroom townhouse. That sounds like it's something made for a family, not for students. And then the same concern as I had the first time with the sidewalks along Washington Boulevard. So I think that's it for me. I pretty much touched on my main concern. So open space, sidewalks, And the townhouses, I don't know where a 4-bedroom townhouse is for, you know, a student to live in. That sounds more like a family, like for phase 1. And that's all.
Thank you. Any additional speakers?
I do have a comment from a Miss Danielle Green, but it's not clear to me whether she wished to speak. I can read the comment. It says, please have the builder address how the layout and adjustments that are being proposed impact Halethorpe Elementary School as it relates to traffic flow and other impacts. She is a community school facilitator for Halethorpe Elementary School. That was her comment. But no other individuals have requested to speak.
And I have additional comment from Ms. Carol Mox. She's asking to explain what size are proposed amenity spaces on pages 26 and 27, length and width.
Okay, and that concludes the community input, correct?
Apparently not. I just got a request from Mr. Carter, Bill Carter. And so, Mr. Carter, you will get 2 minutes.
Mr. Carter, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Terrific. I would like to make a few more comments about the open space. As you know, the Baltimore County Code, Section 32-6108F1 begins by saying, if it is not feasible to meet the open space requirement, and it talks about submit a fee in lieu proposal. I submit that it is feasible to meet the open space requirements. The size and number of buildings proposed is not an inevitable fact. It is merely what the developer wants. Certainly the master plan, building codes and regulations were not written to be circumvented by developers' ability to pay a little money to the county to get what they want. Breaking down the costs, there are 527 beds in the latest phase 2 proposal, and 4 beds equal 1 dwelling unit. So that makes 132 dwelling units. 1,000 square feet of open space are required for each dwelling unit, which equals 132,000 square feet of open space. Just over 3 acres is required. About 10,500 square feet of open space is proposed. This is 121,500 square feet fewer than required. Off-site open space opportunities are unknown currently, and the developer intends to use the fee in lieu rate of $5,000 per 25 units to make up the difference. Now, 10,500 square feet of amenity open space on this revised plan satisfies the open space requirements for 10 units, leaving 122 units worth of open space to calculate the fee for. So we divide 122 by 25, and you get a rate of 4.88. And 4.88 times $5,000 is $24,400. Paying this paltry sum does not improve the project design, nor does it improve the quality of life for future residents.
It's time.
I'm going to pause here to just ask again if there are any additional community members signed up.
I don't see anybody that's requested in the last 2 minutes, so I believe that is everybody, unless Marta or Brett have somebody.
Yeah, no one on my end has signed up.
No one on my end too.
Thank you all for monitoring that and getting the additional feedback in. With that, we'll go to the panel discussion, and I'll start with Mr. Stevens.
Okay. After really reviewing this project, I'll start with the exterior elevations. They seem to be very apropos, and the materials are very appropriate for the elevations and the facades. I guess the only concern I have pertaining to the elevations is on, I guess it's building B. You have indicated in that gable area on a thin brick, which is fine, but you did not you indicated vinyl siding on the other three buildings in that same area, and it's from my perspective, it's not appropriate. If you're going to do it for building B, then it should be at the main entry. It should also be on the other buildings. So that's one comment. I guess the other thing is, and that's really thin brick. I have no problem with it. Everything else that's indicated as brick item, and you have noted on 22, 23, and 24, the brick that's indicated on the facades, but I really want that to be indicated as a brick veneer as opposed to a thin brick veneer as indicated on that gable surface. Now going through the actual site plan on this project, I looked at what you did for the public amenity space between C and D, and then I looked at what was done between A and B, that public amenity space. I think I heard you indicate that you increased the square footage. From my perspective, I don't see where you actually increased the square footage of that public courtyard concept between A and B. It would be nice if it was increased, but from my perspective, it's not. Now let's get to C and D. I must say I welcome the intent that was for the public space, amenity space between C and D, but it's not enough. I mean, we have you have indicated that it's only 1,000 square feet, and then to the right of D, you have indicated another public proposed amenity space. Now, the problems that I have with this is that it's adjacent to the dumpster, and I can't really say that I find that appropriate. So I would, from my perspective, that 2,500 that's adjacent to the dumpster should be incorporated within that 1,000 square feet between building C and D, so we can really, have something that's generous and appropriate as far as a public open space between the two buildings. I don't know if we can get close to the 7,000 square feet between A and B, but if we can get closer, it would be most appropriate. That's having that square footage on the right side of building D adjacent to the dumpster enclosure is just not the best place or location for that public amenity. And I guess on a final note is I kind of look through your top of wall, bottom of wall elevations and the topo through this site, but I really would like to see a more enlarged plan of that retaining wall between A and B and that plaza and that public amenity space. If you could really blow that up and really show what's really occurring there, so it's crystal clear. You know, so if you really blow that up and make that an enlarged area, that really that the northeast side of that corner where the retaining wall is, and then incorporating that public plaza there into a very enlarged plan with partial exterior elevations would be very appropriate. And then when you make the revisions to the public amenity space between C and D, I would do the same here, because there's a lot of up and down and terrace and retaining walls happening in this general area that needs to be much more clear for us, I would say. And I would say just for you also, so you can really understand the ups and downs here. But, you know, just, you know, outside of that, everything else from my perspective, you know, seems appropriate. But, you know, those really are my comments when it comes to the site plan. I mean, I you know, when it comes to these townhouses, I you know, wish we could break it up a little bit more, but I see the relevance of the in and out, and you know, and the site parameters on this. But you know, if there is a way to, I guess, to introduce some open space there, that would be appropriate. But you know, I don't really have, you know, many comments there. It seems like it works. So you know, my main comments are pertaining to building A and B and C and D. Definitely, we really need to rehash that area. So
Okay, thank you, Mr. Stevens.
yeah,
Go ahead.
that wraps me up.
Okay, I'm going to ask that each of the panelists kind of bullet point their particular, you know, the core of their concerns into a concise bullet. So as we come back to making a motion, it will make it somewhat simpler. So Mr. Stevens, thanks for starting us off. And we definitely heard your concern about the AB building as well as open space. So if you could just bullet those points specifically beyond what's already, of course, we can always refer to the staff report, but beyond what's in the staff report, if each panelist could summarize their main concerns. Okay, with that, thank you. With that, we'll move on to Ms. Sauce.
Yes, thank you. I echo some of the same concerns as my fellow panelists and the staff report. I guess bullet point number one would definitely be the open space. I don't think there's enough. I think there could be more amenities added, barbecue, fire pit, fields. You know, this is housing for the university and marketed that way. So thank you for the clarification on the amenity space areas. I think you can do a little bit more. Also, I guess bullet point number two would be lighting. Is there lighting in the amenity space? Is there lighting on the entrance feature signs? It seems like there is a lack of lighting along the northern portion of the site with the townhomes. So just a little bit more detail on that. Bullet point number three, I see that you have a playground. The playground location to me seems a bit unsafe and not centrally located. It's in the back of the site. It seems private to the townhouses. It's also down. There's some significant grading. I see there's a trail to it, but I'm just worried that there's not enough eyes on the street and in the homes back there. So I have some safety concerns with that. And number four for the bullet point from a regulatory standpoint, it looks like there might be some wetland buffer encroachment for the parking along Washington Boulevard, the part that extends past the building. And there also is an existing water tower that's called out on your plans that appears to have an easement around it that looks like it's going over the right of way, and I'm not sure how that's being accessed. I didn't see any access to that. And there's also townhouse, an end unit townhouse next to it with no screening, no landscape screening. So they're going to be looking at a beautiful white water tower. So I would encourage additional landscaping. I think everything else has been covered in all the reports and brought up by some of the community members.
Thank you, Ms. Huss. Let's see, we'll move on to Mr. Sharma next, please.
So basically, I defer to the staff report in addition to, as mentioned, about the spacing and the lighting. I have one question. I'm not clear about that. If the surveillance, or what the better word, monitoring, video monitoring is under the purview of the DRB.
All right, I think I might have missed something. Mr. Sherman, did you ask to see something else, or did you say that's?
Well, what I'm saying, what I'm asking is video surveillance of the facility is under the purview of the DRP.
What is the question, Mr. Sharma?
Camera monitoring or video surveillance of the facility.
So security monitoring?
Yeah, security, yes.
And
if that is included in this project.
that information hasn't been provided with the package.
If I can interject for a moment, this is Mr. Vittori, or Madam Chair, if you don't.
Cecily, you're the chair.
You know, I mean, in terms of secure, I think it's the, you know, we do speak on lighting and safety in terms of that aspect of it. I don't know that we can speak to, you know, security monitoring, such as, you know, are people allowed to put up cameras, for example, on their front doors, that sort of thing. But if it has to do with kind of the public realm and the kind of safety lighting, that I think does. But beyond that, no, I don't. I mean, I don't think we've ever covered whether or not or how to have video surveillance, for example.
I'm going to expand on this a little further, and because this is purpose-built student housing, the developer is going to have to coordinate with the institution on how security will be managed through this development in cooperation with the university, is my understanding how purpose-built student housing is to be facilitated, unless I'm incorrect, but new territory here for everybody.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jason. I see your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I mean, I'm just trying to answer the question. Obviously, following the design review panel talking about kind of the layout of the project, the architecture, and all the things you went over at the very beginning, and then Ms. Nugent again repeated from the Department of Planning repeated, you know, the issues for this is really what does it look like from an aesthetic standpoint, and ultimately when it comes to security, we are bound following, as is customary, when we go to the DRP for any project, there's the option of going for a limited exemption or filing a development plan. And we are absolutely filing a development plan. There's a provision in the county code if you have more than one dwelling unit being added or some kind of density, which we clearly do to an approved development plan, you have to go to a hearing for the development, which will involve traffic. which will involve open space, which is distinguishable from amenity open space. Open space has to do with a number of square feet, 1,000 square feet for every unit. And that's a whole nother subject that we've kind of mixed and mingled amenity open space and open space as if they're two things, and they are very much two different things. Amenity open space is typically only provided as part of commercial development or sometimes for certain residential projects. And certainly we've, since the last meeting, we were asked to add some amenity open space. In this case, security is also something that I think is going to be addressed as part of the management plan, which doesn't get filed until we file the development plan with the Department of Permits, Approvals, and Inspection per the regulation section 441 and the definition section 101 of the Baltimore County zoning regulations. All of that's laid out there. And just one other point on the top,
So if you could conclude, thank you.
buildings are one other thing, and buildings can take the form of what looks like a townhouse or what looks like a multifamily building, but it expressly says in the zoning regulations for purpose-built student housing, multifamily buildings, which any of us looking at these buildings would call it multifamily housing, but it says it's not that. So in this case, the regulations are relatively new. I know the design review panel doesn't necessarily look at these all the time because this is the first project for purpose-built student housing I've ever seen, but it's moving forward. And I can tell you all the other purpose-built student housing or any apartments that currently serve students of UMBC for a market study we did have no amenity open space. So the standard that the DRP
Okay, I think you're going into argumentative rather than explanation, so I'm going to cut you off there. But if we have further questions, we'll come back to you. So with that, just to give a follow-up to Mr. Sharma, I think that abundantly answers the question that security is something that probably falls outside of our direct purview, but will be handled through management with the university. Do you have any other comments or questions, Mr. Sharma?
No, thank you.
Okay. So then let's move on to Mr. Rennell.
Thanks, Cecily. Several comments. I echo the previous comments. There is very little information on the open spaces, sections, perspectives, and other supporting materials would be very helpful to understand the function and the amenities of these spaces. There's a lot of grading happening here. It's very difficult to understand how usable the spaces are. Specifically, probably my first bullet point is the open space at C and D has no ADA accessibility. So I would not consider that to be an open space for all of the residents. I too have a concern about the linear open space adjacent to building D. I think that's poorly located. Seems to just be left over parking or areas that could be for parking. It would be more applicable in a more central location. I appreciate the detailed plans that were sent earlier today. I have several concerns, especially around buildings A and B. It appears that many of the grades accessing the building aren't clear. It looks like they're going to require stairs and ramps or both to get into several of the doorways. It would be good to understand what those impacts would be to the site plan. The townhomes along Avalon Ridge Road are 5 feet higher than the street with an upper sidewalk and one connection. It seems like it would be much more appropriate to have these buildings connect to the street. It will require more walls or stairs, but having a physical and visual connection seems more appropriate in this condition. It is also very difficult to understand the relationship of the site walls and the grades and the railings that are going to be required in some of the submitted documents. I think further detail would be needed to further show those for some of the other comments. And then two last comments with the detailed plans. I appreciate the addition of the bike racks, but it looks like some of them are not accommodated on the plans near the bus stop shelters. It's not clear how those would be accommodated on the plans. Some of the bus stop shelters appear to be located in areas of steep slopes, which may require additional site walls. And then I do, as echoed in some of the other comments, I do appreciate the addition of the crosswalks on the site, but the sidewalks themselves do not connect to the crosswalks. So that's something that should be addressed as well on the next site plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Khan.
Thank you. I support basically everything that folks have said. I would only highlight some of them is that I think this amenity open spaces are really too small, basically, not fully developed. These are large buildings, and the spaces between them are really going to seem very much more confined than they might even in a plan like this. And I think that just really needs further study to work better. I agree that with everybody in the staff report, the comments that have been made.
Okay, thank you. And I'll kind of reiterate a few points and then ask a few questions here. Yeah, I agree with, I understand that there's, the difference between open space and amenity space. I think where the panel, some of the community and others are reacting to, and planning staff are reacting to this is that, there may be other calculated open space, but what we're really lacking here is, other recreational facilities that should provide amenities to the target audience of this development, the students. And so when we see that, I agree with the panelists, some of those areas between the buildings, they may be smaller than we think, but I think what we've seen thus far, barring the grading and some of the access conditions that other panelists have mentioned, I think they're, they're starting to be nicely developed. I think there is a substantial lack of recreational amenity space within the project currently. So, while it goes to others to analyze the actual amenity space square footage, I think the panel's points are clear on that from all panelists saying, we're missing that component within the current plan that we have before us. I'd like to ask a question related to that is if we could go to, and I apologize, I don't know the exhibit, but the exhibit that shows the overall connectivity to the surrounding trail system.
I think it's 21, if that helps.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Can you walk me through, because I think one of the questions we had was, better connectivity to the surrounding and access. I feel like there are some pieces that are still missing. I think I heard in your presentation that you talked about a shared use trail along the roadway at the entry. I'm not seeing, I see how the one, oh gosh, I'm gonna have that proposed trail that's kind of looping around. How is this all connected? Can you walk us through coming from the campus, from outside the community into the community, not through the community? I can see those connection points, but coming from campus, coming from other communities, how we get into this project.
Sure. Happy to take that. And just so I understand, you're looking for is if you're coming from the university campus to the property, correct?
Yeah, as well as potential other connections to neighborhood streets.
Yeah, so from a campus standpoint, a shuttle will be provided. There will be 3 bus stops. They're not identified on this plan. They are shown on, I think, on maybe the next sheet. One of them on the southern portion, 2 on the northern portion. Those are alongside the sidewalk system. The sidewalk system that's proposed here is highlighted in orange, which is what provides the pedestrian connectivity throughout not just phase 1, but then also what we're talking about here with the purpose-built student housing on both the north and the south. So coming from campus, you'd be able to ride the bus to get off at one of the stops closest to your respective home, and walk to your unit. Similarly, I did mention, I think you're alluding to a bike lane along Route 1, Washington Boulevard, that will be proposed as part of the overall development that was phase 1. So that will start the bicycle connectivity along Route 1 that SHA is requested.
So sorry, is that a shared use path, and like what are the dimensions? What's the is it along the full frontage of the project site?
Yeah, so it will be within the asphalt. So it's not a shared use path off behind the curb, I think is what you're alluding to. It will be a striped lane within US 1 cartway or roadway, paved roadway. It will go the length of the full frontage. So from kind of the center of the page here, the whole way up through to where it starts saying Washington along that frontage. It will be, I believe, 4 or 5 feet in width. SHA has a standard off the top of my head. I don't recall what that is, but it will be proposed to meet SHA's bicycle compatibility standards.
So is that meant, sorry to ask specifics, but I think this is critical given the target audience. So, I mean, that 4 to 5 width, is that a two-way, or are you saying that it's on both sides of the road, one way in each direction, and is it protected? So
Sure. So it is on one side of the road. So generally speaking, that would be a one directional piece. We don't have control on the other side of Route 1 from that standpoint. And then to be from a protected standpoint, there's striping as SHA mandates per the MUTCD guidelines within, again, the paved roadway. So there'll be striping, there'll be the little painted bicycle marking that you see as you drive around state roads.
okay, and then moving on from that, just it's hard to read this, so that's part of the problem. The proposed trails that are in the reddish color, are those proposed by the project, and how do those connect in? There's a segment there on the west side that I'm not sure I even see how it connects in.
Sure. So those red, brownish color trails are proposed with what we're calling phase 1, the 182 townhomes that are currently proposed. They all connect to sidewalks, whether it be over along Maple Avenue or to the internal pieces, internal roadways and sidewalks.
Okay, so that one all the way to the west, I think, was on Randall. It connects up to Maple.
So actually, that has since been removed based on phase 1 approvals and processing. The connection to Maple, excuse me, that will connect down to Randall Avenue, though.
Okay, I guess I'm not sure.
It goes up in a circle around.
Cecily, there was a Board of Appeals decision, and the agreement was to remove that loop trail that feeds into Randall Avenue.
Okay.
So there's a loop from Randall Avenue, but it doesn't continue from the loop up to Maple Avenue, to be clear.
I see. Okay, thank you for that clarification. It looked like stuff. So my next question is, for the townhouse architecture, can you walk me through that? Because I'm not clear on the exhibits and, and how we are to evaluate that, given the directive from the bill that I mentioned, Bill 61-21, and how we're to review it. So can you walk us through the architecture specifically, the plans and who these are geared towards? Are they for faculty? I'd love that answered definitively by the presenters, so that we all heard that last time. So I think we need to understand, if these are geared towards students, if there is some idea that faculty will be present or these will be marketed to faculty, how will these operate, and walk us through that for the record.
I'll just briefly state as the representative of the team that, we're going to get a management company in. Obviously, the definition of a purpose-built student housing, as Mr. McAuliffe pointed out, just like the definition of a dormitory, is to be designed and marketed for housing of students, both undergraduate and graduate, resident counselors or advisors. If somebody from a zoning determining factor decides resident counselors or advisors constitutes faculty, then we may very well market to them. If there's a determination that it does not constitute faculty, we would only market to undergraduate and graduate students. There's way more capacity that needs to be served with undergraduate and graduate students than we can possibly address on this site. So we are comfortable that that will be sufficient. But if there's a way to make it work where faculty might be able to benefit as well, we would certainly endeavor to do that. I don't know that that has a lot to do with design versus being a zoning or use issue, but that is the plan. We will meet the definition as.
I think, I mean, this is, there's, I think it's, well, I mean, in my read of it, it's pretty clear. I'm sure you can argue the point, but I do think that that slides into, other review categories then and other requirements. So I would say, honestly, as the chair currently, I would say that if that is the case, we may need to call it back to the DRP because that changes quite a number of the requirements that we would be asked to look at. I do have a question. If we can go to the townhouse elevations, do we have, front, side, rear elevations? Because I thought I only saw the front elevations.
Yes. So sorry to interrupt. Page, what you're looking at there is the front. I think 71 has a rear. 73 has the sides. That's on the, what I'll call the northern ones. Then going down to 84 are the southern ones, the 11. 84 is the front. The rear is 92, and then the sides are 90, slide 94, page 94. Sorry to interrupt you.
Okay, so I guess, and Jennifer, you may need to weigh in on this. I'm used to the pattern books having to include these, kind of elevations, and I know that we're seeing them now, but I don't think we've fully reviewed those prior. So I guess I have a couple. I'll just to the comments that I'm seeing, or I'll relate my comments to those drawings that I'm seeing tonight. One is the staggering of the units, so their frontage steps back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I think it would be much more appropriate to, for example, step in logical groupings so that, the ends of the units protrude forward, step forward, and the center units step back, more like what you would see in traditional neighborhood planning rather than the staggered approach that you see in suburban development. I think, it's trying to digest this all. I think the materiality that I'm seeing here, barring the other comments from Mr. Stevens and others about the brick, I think seems appropriate and relates the townhouse architecture to the multifamily architecture. So I think that's fine. I do think that rear loading those creates a better approach on Avalon Ridge Boulevard. So I did appreciate that. I think that changed, but I agree with the other panelists about the connectivity from those units, front door down to Avalon Ridge Road. I don't think the Boulevard, I don't think I saw lead walks either. And would say that if we're trying to create a walkable environment here, that we should be able to, say, arrive at a bus stop, walk down the street sidewalk, and go up the lead walk to the units to visit your college friends in their luxury townhouse. And, you know, I think I'll just summarize for my other panelists. I know somebody's been keeping track of all the bullet points to make a motion, but I'll summarize mine by saying the open space beyond the, you know, accessibility and grading. Other members have mentioned just the lack of recreational amenity space for the user group is notable. The connectivity overall on the site, I am not, you know, convinced that a bike lane on Route 1 that's striped only, that's not buffered some other way, that's only 4 to 5 feet wide, either case, for two-way traffic, for cyclists riding both to and from the development is not adequate. And then the townhouse, you know, frontage to step in more appropriate ways to meet the, you know, its frontage as well as connectivity to the street sidewalks should be investigated. I guess the other point is I do have, as a note, I have hesitation on the offering these units to faculty when, at least by my read, the language is fairly clear, as already read out, that if these are marketed to faculty, I think we would have we would have to look back at this project again. So I mean, those are some critical points that I have, and I'll go back to the rest of the panelists and ask if one of my colleagues has had a chance to note down the various concerns and could put forth a motion. Does anyone feel prepared to give that list? Mr. Stevens, did I see?
Cecily?
Go ahead.
This is Joe Yusufero. May I respond to, as a non-panelist for this, may I respond to a couple things and just ask for clarification on some things?
Yes, but only if they were direct questions or direct clarifications. So I'll ask you to be limited in your response.
Okay. So as part of this design team, we've been pulling together this package since a month or two before October. We put together a very thoughtful package, which was submitted and reviewed at the October meeting. We got several comments that we believe we adequately responded to. We did increase the amenity open space. We did make some modifications to the architecture, and we did many other suggestions. Tonight, we got many more comments, and it feels like the goalposts are moving. So
I'm going to have to, this again is moving into the territory of defense rather than just explanation of the process. So unless there is a specific, you know, question that you're answering or further information that's being provided, I can't let you continue, especially since you've recused yourself.
Understood. I'm just asking for specific clarity with the motion.
Yeah, we'll be clear in the motion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so with that, I'm going to turn back to the panelists and ask if there is one of the panelists who can move a motion. You can start in, you know, barring that, I will ask for us to succinctly go around and additively combine with, and I will tag one of my fellow panelists to make a motion. Okay, so what I'm going to do.
I make a motion.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Stevens.
Yeah.
Go ahead, I'll take notes and
Well,
we'll
yeah,
add in anything that we,
well, yeah. There's gonna have to be a lot of add-in, but anyway, I make a motion.
And
To,
sorry, can you state with your motion clearly, since we didn't do that last time, if this is approve with conditions, resubmit required?
well, from my perspective, it's not approved and need to be resubmitted to DRP unless there's disagreement with that.
Okay, continue.
So, based on that and my comments, bullet point 1, the public amenity between A and B needs to be reevaluated and restudied and to really produce more detail on the retaining walls and the ramps and the steps and et cetera. Just mainly in that northeast corner of A and B. On the building, the public amenity space between C and D, that really needs to be restudied a lot. That's just way too small. The 2,500 square foot amenity space to the right of building D and close to the dumpster enclosure should be incorporated within that middle space, so that becomes much more generous space. And the exterior elevations for buildings A, B, C, and D, the main entry gable surface should be a thin set brick, not vinyl siding. And the balance of the brick, which is indicated by number 22, 23, and 24, should be a brick veneer. And that addresses my concerns. Now, I guess others can add to that. Please.
Yeah, I think we're gonna need to go around. So Mr. Stevens, because we need one person to make a motion, I'm gonna ask you to keep a log of these. I'm gonna, go around as quickly as we can. And if you can add to the 3 that you mentioned and add in any additional, we'll continue with Ms. Sauce. If you can add I think you had maybe was 4 bullet points.
Sorry, I'm just going through my notes. So I don't believe there's adequate lighting. So I would ask for more lighting information. The open space concerns and more centrally located green spaces. And if there's waivers or variances that need to be obtained for wetland buffer encroachments and for the existing water tower.
Yeah, I do. I mean, on that last point, I think that falls in other folks' purview. The wetlands encroachment will be reviewed outside of this panel.
Okay.
As well as you're saying specifically the encroachment on the water tower or any fall zone, et cetera. That was, so I would say should probably strike that one from the motion.
Sure.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Sharma. Any items to add to the motion? Yeah, Mr. Sharma.
Sorry about that. It was on mute. I said lighting and the open space.
Okay, so those are redundant, not new. Very good. Okay. Mr. Reynolds?
Thanks, Cecily. Couple here. I think they need to provide final grading information related to the building entries at buildings A and B to clearly show accessibility or if there's a need for walls or stairs. At open space C and D, a ramp should be provided to the open space. Along Avalon Ridge Road, lead walkways and stairs should be provided between each townhouse unit and the street. Proposed bike rack location should be shown clearly on the plans, and that adequate space is provided to allow them to be usable and to be confirmed with site grading. And proposed site plan should be updated to ensure that sidewalks are connected to proposed crosswalks.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Khan?
Yes, I would add that we should, as part of this motion, which we've listed as things that are quite specific, that we should incorporate the comments from the county
Yes.
as part of the motion and adopt their recommendations.
Thank you for that. Okay, and then I think my two ads, as stated before, would be the connectivity for ped and bike network off-site, particularly to the campus, should be adequate for the community it is serving, namely students. That, and this is really an add-on to some of the other comments. I guess what I have is number 5, the open space concerns that Ms. Sauce noted, that there needs to be additional recreational amenity space in addition to the what I'll call passive amenity space that has been shown on the site so far. Those would be my two, sorry, and then the last one would be the architecture for the townhouses. Be studied, that the staggering of the elevations be rethought to group those stepping of the elevations. So step the elevations in groups rather than stagger them one by one. So that's a mouthful. So, I mean, I think Mr. Stevens, I don't know if those notes were appropriate enough or succinct enough. If you have a good list, if you could read back through that. I do think, I would start with the suggestion that Mr. Khan said to reference those comments that or conditions that are in the staff report.
Okay.
And then add to the additional comments.
Yeah, I'll start, and hopefully this is a complete effort. But number one is to.
Can you start off by saying what the motion is, the action that the applicant needs to do? Are they coming back? They need to resubmit.
Yeah.
It's not approved. It is approved, conditionally approved.
Oh, it's not approved. So I make a motion that this project is not approved, and number one is to really to incorporate the comments from the staff report and incorporate that within this document. And I guess to start the actual bullet point list, number one would be to incorporate to restudy the public amenity between A and B in a more detailed fashion, especially that northeast corner with the retaining walls and the ramps and the steps and et cetera. Bullet point 2 is to incorporate the public amenity space in between building C and D, and to transfer the public amenity to the right of building D and in between the dumpster into that middle portion of the amenity, hopefully to increase that to something that is much more generous in scope. Number 3, the bullet point 3 is to incorporate the thin brick within the main entry gable, and not have it be vinyl siding. The balance of the brick on the building A, B, C, and D, which is items number 22, 23, and 24, should be a brick veneer. Item bullet point number 4, there's not adequate site lighting, that needs to be restudied. Bullet point number 5, there should be more centrally located green spaces throughout the site. Bullet point number 6, there should be a final grading study done which incorporate all the necessary retaining walls or stairs on the site. Bullet point number 7, there should be an incorporation of the necessary ramps that's needed between building A and B, and within between A and B. And bullet point 8 is to make sure that there's adequate sidewalks throughout the site plan. Bullet point number 9 to confirm and verify all the bike racks are located properly throughout the site, and there's an adequate amount of bike racks. Number 10, the sidewalk, the connectivity of the sidewalks should be updated and revised in conjunction with the necessary crosswalks on the site. So is that bullet point 10 or 11?
I think I was, hang on, let me recount. 1, 2,
Yeah, I think that was 11.
yes, because I had crossed
Okay.
one out, so yeah.
Okay. Number 12, the site should connect all the bike paths and the bike network between the community and the students. Bullet point number 13, there is a need to add additional recreational space on the site, and that should be really studied. Bullet point number 14, and the final bullet point, unless number 14, what do I have here? The architecture for the townhouses should be a staggering and stepped concept, which should be more in a group function, not individually done. So,
Yeah, not staggered, but stepping logically in groups.
yes.
Can you clarify more what that means, Cecily? I don't think we're quite following that.
What is it? The apple? I'm sorry, I'm trying to scroll in my own document here. It's being stubborn. For the townhouses along the main entry road, they are stepping back and forth individually currently. The idea, and throughout the site, is look at those townhouses to step in groups rather than individually in a staggered pattern. So if you look at the site plan that shows it, you know, any part of the site plan shows it, that shows the townhouses. And if you zoom in, say, for example, on the southern townhouses, or any of the townhouses, you can see that they step back and forth individually rather than in groups. It's a little bit easier to see on the ones to the south, how they jump back and forth, back and forth. Okay, so I do think, does that clarify that, Jennifer? And other, you know, if staff
Yes.
needs further, okay, I think the list was fairly clear. I'm sure they, you know, some of the comments could be consolidated, you know, the open space or amenity space comments could be consolidated, but I think that is a fairly succinct and thorough list. Thank you, Mr. Stevens, for putting that together. If there's no other clarification needed by staff, we'll move, but just ask Jennifer, Marta, if there's any further clarification needed.
No, I don't think so.
No comments from me.
Okay, and with that, there is a motion on the floor with those items, 14 items as part of the motion. And I'll ask for a call. Well, sorry, I'm going to do one other thing before we move to say aye or nay. Does anybody object with the starting point of Mr. Anyone on the panel object to the starting point of Mr. Stevens' motion to not approve and return to the DRP? Okay, hearing none, I will put the motion on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. So that is.
Cecily, we need someone to second the motion first.
There's always a hang up. Yeah, okay, so sorry, let's retract that. I'll ask for that again. Can someone second the motion before we go to them? Okay, sorry, who was that? Mr. Khan?
Yeah.
Thank you for the second. Okay, so we'll do the vote again, please. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. So that is a unanimous vote and the motion is so moved. And with that, we can adjourn the meeting if there is someone who will put forth the motion.
I move we
This is, yep, good. This is Matt making a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. And with that, the DRP meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.